Hi guys, I wanted to explain the start files for you, not only just to show you, but to kind of explain what I'm looking for. So over here on the left-hand side of D2L, underneath week 2, there is a link, Start Files. If you click on that, it shows you everything, but then it also drops down because it's broken down into the different pieces of the start file that I'm looking for and examples of them. So first we have the proposal client brief, then we have prototype examples, flowchart examples, wireframe examples, style guide and color scheme, and then sketches. So let me start at the top with the proposal client brief. This is a Word document that you can just click on and download, and it's kind of like one of those fill in the answers. And make sure that you have done some research on the company that you're going to do so that you understand enough about the company that you can answer it intelligently. So now it's not just about answering the questions, though. It's about figuring out what the company is about, what their clients want, and who their clients are, and understanding that so that you can create the best possible website for that company. So you can go ahead and download that. If you have any questions about it, just ask. You can send me an email or send me a text message and ask me about those. The next set of information is prototype examples. So a prototype is basically a home page that you design either in Illustrator or Photoshop. So all the information that you would normally have on a home page, you would design and have that on the page in Photoshop or Illustrator. In this example, we have what the rollover would look like when you roll over it. Sometimes people do that. It's fine if you do, it's fine if you don't. Make sure that you have a copyright. And one of the good things that you can put down in the footer is not only the copyright, but you can also put social media icons. So that would be a good idea. Another thing that goes in the footer is almost like a sitemap. It's every link that you could possibly go to in the site, but not necessarily in the main navigation. Here's another example. And this person has a sign-in. The only thing that I feel they're missing, it should say email address or username and password, and then a button to actually log in or something like that. But I do like how they have a little advertisement on there, so that shows that they're thinking about other aspects to a home page besides just what you see. Here's another example of a home page design. Again, they actually brought the cursor in to show you what the rollover state would look like when you roll over it. They've got also other little aspects and elements to the page. Here's our fourth example of what a home page looks like. This person put on a blank video screen just to kind of show there's going to be a video here. I just don't know what yet, that type of thing. Notice that she's got some subtle gradient in the background to add a little something to it so it's not just boring. There's also a drop shadow that you can barely see, but it's there. And then they have a subtle texture at the top in the header. By the way, I can't remember if any of these were actually the ones that they went with, but I just thought they were pretty good examples for a prototype design. So this is an example of a flowchart. So a flowchart is just supposed to be boxes, squares, and then lines. And it's supposed to represent every possible page that a user can go to in the site. It's done in Illustrator so that it's nice and neat and organized. So from the home page, there would be, in this example, 5 links. So the main menu would have 5 links. Once you get to the recipe page, there would be cookies, cakes, chocolate, frozen, brownies, fruit, cupcakes, puddings, and cheesecakes as the categories. And each one of those categories would have all holiday, party, kids, and picnic as your section to go to. And this little icon indicates that there are many, many, many pages. So this says recipes, and it just has the 3 boxes to indicate that there's lots of recipes. And then they also added that every recipe is going to have an overview, ingredients, and a directions on it. These are not pages that you go to, although in, I believe, the mobile version of this website, you could possibly go to those 3 as separate pages. But in the beginning, the desktop version, it's all on the same page. The search, you wouldn't necessarily have a search as your square. I mean, because it represents that you actually click and go to a page. So if you have an advanced search page, then you would have that as a separate square on your flowchart. But if the search is just a search box that you're going to have on the home page somewhere, and then they click and they get results, you don't necessarily, or you wouldn't necessarily have that as a link in your flowchart. Here's another example. This is more along the lines of what you guys would be creating, because you're not going to have such a complex website, especially to begin with. So this person has a homepage, products, about us, clients, calendar of events, newsletters, and contact us. Now, a wireframe is different from a prototype design because it's a quick, boxy layout, just to kind of show where possible elements could be. It's also different from sketches because sketches are even faster and they're hand drawn. So there's 2 different types of wireframes. There is a digital wireframe, which is what you see here, and that's just done in Illustrator with boxes and then text in it to say what that section's going to be. And then there is an HTML wireframe, which is basically the same thing except that you have done it using HTML and CSS. So you have the different boxes and you have the text in there. Most of the time when you do an HTML wireframe, you've got solid colors in there. But you wouldn't have details yet, like you wouldn't have button names and that sort of thing unless you are absolutely sure what buttons are going to be. So here's another example. These boxes with the squares or the X's in it, that's just showing that a picture or a video is going to go there, maybe a slideshow. So there's lots of ways to represent the different elements without actually bringing in photographs. If you have the photographs, great, but the purpose of these wireframes is to make something very, very fast so that you and your team, excuse me, or you and your boss can look at them and go over them. You usually do about 3 wireframes and maybe 5 depending on your group. And then of those, you'll make about 3 prototypes for a client to look at and go over. So here's an example of a color scheme and a style guide. So on the left-hand side, we've got the color scheme, and we have a picture from nature, and then we've pulled out and brought in the hexadecimal numbers for 6 colors on the side. Now, a good color scheme has no more than about 3 or 4 hues. I have 6 colors, but the first 2 are from the same hue or the same color family. This is just a darker version of this color. Same with the middle 2. These are the same hue, the same purple. This is just much lighter than this one. And then we have grays at the bottom. And again, these are the same 2 types of gray. It's just one is lighter than the other. So that's how you get away with having high contrast. You pick like 2 or 3 colors, and then you take that color and you make a really bright or really light color of it or a really dark color of it so that you can have high contrast with your text to your background. On this side, we have examples of fonts that are going to be used on the site. So we have what the logo is going to be in. It's got the font name, the font size, and then this is an example of the font. Now the example of the font either can be the word, such as logo or main title. You can have the whole alphabet of example of the font, but you want one of these two, you would want in the exact size. So in this case, we've got the logo in the exact size and the exact font to show what it's going to look like. Then you generally have like a main heading or a title or something like that, and you would show the font name, font size. Sometimes you actually see the line height as well. Most of the time, line height is 1.5. So that means 1.5 times the font size itself. Sometimes it's a little bit bigger, sometimes it's a little bit smaller. But that's just a general rule that you can go by. So again, the heading is in the font and the size that's listed. Then we have body copy and we have footer text. Now you got to be really careful with body copy and footer text because you don't want to make them too small or too big. So body copy probably should not be any bigger than 18 point, but it really depends on the audience and who's going to be looking at the site. And then footer text can be as small as 10 pixels or 10 points, but you don't really want to go any smaller than that. Both your body copy and your footer text you want as a sans serif font. But if you want any kind of serif font on your site, you're going to want to go with the main heading or the logo to have that serif font. In this example, we only have 2 fonts total in the whole entire website. And that is so we can have unity. If you have more than 3 fonts, then things start to fall apart. The page starts to look not as unified and kind of disorganized. So no more than 3 fonts. Actually, the real rule of thumb is two fonts, but sometimes people can get away with having a 3rd font for the logo. And then for colors, you don't want any more than 3 or 4 main hues. Also, you can see in a style guide, you might see how buttons will be treated. So this is an example of if I had actual text buttons or picture buttons, what they would look like. Some patterns that could be used on the site and what colors they would look like. So if I had a text box that had information in it, maybe it would have this blue background, it would have a rounded edge, and it would have an outline of this 2-pixel solid blue color. And then there's some textures down here that could possibly be used in different parts of the site, such as the background of the main entire page, or maybe the background of a header, that type of thing. Here's an example of color scheme only. So again, we have, actually in this example, these 3, or actually these 2, I think, are the same color. This is a 3rd separate color that's from the lighter part of this fish. But these 3 are, I believe, the same hue, just different brightnesses and saturations. And then here's an example of a style guide only, where we see the different fonts, how they're going to be treated, what they're going to look like, possible color palette with high contrast, possible buttons, what they could look like, social media icons, form inputs, slider bars, that type of thing. So this type of style guide would be used for a much larger site that would have a lot more information added to it. And then finally we have some examples of sketches. So sketches are supposed to be hand-drawn examples of what the home page could look like. Okay, so we have in this example we have 11, I believe. Yep, we have 11 sketches. Sometimes people will sketch out what the secondary page would look like. And then here we have some more sketches, just different styles, what they're going to look like. This is, I believe, mobile sketches, which is why the page looks elongated. And then here we have some more sketches, a little more detailed, but still they're quick hand-drawn sketches. So those are pretty much the start files, and then I'll be asking for you to do start files. Usually what I mean by start files is the proposal, not the prototypes, because that's going to be a separate assignment. Flowchart, wireframe, color guide and style, color scheme and style guide, and then sketches. So the prototypes would be a separate assignment. Let me know if you have any questions. You can, again, email me or text me.